Nick, welcome. Thank you for coming. We really appreciate that. Before we start and dive into the story of Nutmeg and Nick as an entrepreneur, a few facts about how to make the best out of tonight. You notice already we have this wall behind us where you can ask questions. It's really simple. If you want, just take out the mobile phone. No need to download anything. Just open your browser and go to slido.com, and that's it. You just type in the hashtag SGEuro and you can ask away anything which interests you. We promise we will answer the top 5 questions and you will decide which ones. Okay? That's the first thing. Another thing is we are live streaming this talk not for this room only, but also for the whole world to see. And if you go to our Facebook page of Startup Grind Europe, you can share the stream for your friends if you want. It's very simple. So we have people from all around the world watching this talk, and let's go right in. Nick, something unusual happened in London a few weeks ago, Brexit. What do you think about it?
Well, judging by the way 2016 is going, I don't think it's very unusual at all. 2016 has been a year for unprecedented surprises, and I think we're going to see a few more before the year is out. You know, especially if we look at across the pond to America and see how things are going there. There is a massive popular uprising, a massive popular manifestation of consciousness, which I think our leaders have failed to understand and acknowledge over the last probably 5 or so years. A couple of generations of people who are being basically ignored in favor of generations who are older and wealthier and don't want to give the same privileges to those younger generations that they've experienced themselves. So when you look at how politics is going in countries like Spain, what's happening in voting in Austria, the rise of the right in France, I think for anyone to say that Brexit was a surprise is slightly naive. As far as I'm concerned, you know, it's happened now. I didn't vote to leave. You know, I was, just for the record, I was a Remain voter and I was disappointed by the result. But the reality is that we've got it now, and I think we should make the most of it. And I think there are some huge opportunities that we can now take forward and benefit from.
I agree, but how do you see it as an entrepreneur? How does it affect your company, for example?
So it doesn't affect Nutmeg per se. You know, both in what we do for our customers, we manage globally diversified portfolios. So it's quite remarkable, actually. I have a special suit which I only wear on big battle days. I've only worn it 5 times in the last 4 years. And that Friday morning I put it in and we all headed to the office, and some of the investment team had been there all night. And most of us got in around 6:30. And it was remarkable, the portfolios, 80% of them were up, 80% of customers were up on that Friday. And by Tuesday night, 99.8% of our customers had seen a rise in the value of their investments, whilst the FTSE was down about 12-15%, and sterling was down, you know, from 150 to the dollar to 130. And that's because customers, if they're invested properly, are invested in American equities and gold and, you know, bonds and different asset classes. And that's what Nutmeg sets out to do. So for our customers, it has very little impact. For Nutmeg, I see it again as being, you know, potentially a very positive thing. So we have people that work from home in America, and we have people that work from home in Europe and help us on the team. And the frustrating thing for us is that, you know, for the people who work in America, they can't come into the UK, even though, you know, Alex, who's here, is one of my co-founders, Ben. Basically, he wouldn't be able to get a visa, despite the fact he's, you know, the top of his class in product design at Stanford, and, you know, engineering boy wonder, you know, from Stanford. He wouldn't be able to get a visa because it's not open to people outside of Europe. So as long as we, what we're doing is we're saying we're going to take the best of the best from the world, rather than a wider spread of people from just Europe, I think that's going to be a really positive thing for companies like Nutmeg, which will be hiring, technical talent from all over the place.
Yeah. Before we start and discuss the story of Nutmeg, can you just tell us why Nutmeg?
The name?
Yeah.
So we are very, very particular in our design and our product, branding. We believe very much in ethnographic research. This is something I got converted to when I lived in California. It means we don't do too many surveys. The way we discover what people need from us is to spend 4 or 5 hours observing them in their natural habitats, or just watching how they behave with their families or with their friends. For example, a couple of the team went and sat at a cafe opposite a cash point for a couple of hours once and discovered that when people have shopping bags and they go to cash points, instead of putting the shopping bags down, even if they're heavy when they enter their PIN, they pick the shopping bags up in an attempt to somehow hide the PIN and not risk the shopping being stolen from them, which is a really interesting concept. So we believe in that deep ethnographic research, which helps us discover needs, which we can then work on product design for. And over the course of 8 months, we tested 519 names to get to Nutmeg. It sounds a lot, but it really is so important, I think, to position your company correctly. And Nutmeg was the only name that got a rating of over 50% for trust with our target group, and that's so important to us. And people associate it with a couple of things: home. Their first pet is often called Nutmeg for some reason. For soccer fans, it's kind of putting the ball between someone's legs and performing a miraculous trick on the pitch, which is kind of what we were aiming to do for financial institutions. But most importantly, in the 17th and 18th centuries, nutmeg was the most valuable spice in the world.
I didn't know that.
And actually, some of the worst genocides, which I shouldn't mention, very morbid, were because of the Dutch and the English fighting over the Nutmeg Islands. If people who worked in the docks in Liverpool and New York weren't allowed pockets in their trousers, because if they stole 2 nutmegs, they could run away and retire for life. So now, of course, nutmeg isn't so exclusive and is actually available to everybody, which, boom, 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 is exactly what we've done to wealth management, democratized it.
I totally agree that you should not ask people what they want because they don't know themselves. You should observe the things they do, and what they do is much more powerful than what they say they do. The nutmeg story started when you were having a nice job. You were a stockbroker. You also have a background of lots of financial institutions from different banks. Why did you do it?
Yeah, so actually, the idea emerged as I was finishing my MBA over in California at Stanford University, and what happened was I was planning on moving to the East Coast of America to work in a bank, and people started asking me to help manage their money, and these were friends. And having worked in banks before, I kind of understood that the quickest way to lose friends would be to manage their money, because I would get blamed when it went down and no credit if it went up. And so I said, I'm not going to do that, guys. But the first iteration of the idea was, which we developed in a class, was to build a dating app to match potential clients with advisors. And this was really successful in our trials when we spoke to advisors, because they said, I really like serving people who are into data, or I really like serving entrepreneurs, or I really like serving, grannies. And so we were very positive about this, that we could match people with advisors who wanted to manage their type of personalities. And so we built a psychometric test and pushed it out to the advisors. But unfortunately, it came back with very different results. Instead of saying, I want to look after entrepreneurs, the advisors all said, I want to look after these people. And and that was really unhelpful. So we called up and said, what is it? You told us you liked X, and now you're telling us you like everybody. And they said, oh, well, actually, we've had a rethink, and what we really like is a diverse group of clients. I should have known, right? I should have known, having worked in the industry, but basically it was like, I want to get as much money as I can because I earn my fees on the money I manage. And so that was really disappointing to hear, and what I figured from that was we talked about 75 wealth managers, speaking to them, I realized that everyone pretty much manages money in the same way. It's all the multi-asset, diversified portfolios. And I reasoned that we could do that pretty simply through an online app ourselves. So we could give you the best investment service. We could improve the personal service by adding online and telephone to the face-to-face. What's not to like? And that was the genesis of the idea. So it came out of a problem that people were asking me to solve, and then took a few iterations to get to where it is now.
So you had the idea, you want to go out and do it. How do you start? What did you do first?
Well, the first thing was acknowledging that it was something that I wanted to do. And 2 years in California had a profound effect on me in studying. But probably one of the most important things that I realized, or the things that changed me the most, was how I altered my definition of risk. So when I left England, my definition of risk was doing something. It was quitting my job, which was nicely paid, and I was getting fat and happy and all the rest of it, to go to California and to do an MBA. Risk was, doing a crazy, sporting event or bungee jump or something like that. Risk was doing something. And during those 2 years, I learned really from professors and classmates and all the other inspirational figures around, all the entrepreneurs, that actually risk is not doing something, right? Risk isn't doing something. Risk is not doing something, and you begin to get this feeling in your tummy that it's all about, it's all about regret. The biggest risk you have is looking back in 15 or 20 years' time and regretting that you didn't do something. I'm not ever going to claim that I was the shyest guy in the world, but I recently got married, and I met my fiancée in a pub, and I didn't want to be the person that didn't ask her out. I didn't want to regret that. And that was how my definition of risk has changed. It's actually about not doing something. And so getting started for me was acknowledging that first, like thinking, wow, I've got an idea here that it's a real idea, it's a problem that needs to be solved. People are asking me to solve it, and I need to get on with it. And if I don't do it, I'm going to regret it, because sure as eggs, someone's going to do this and get very wealthy and make a massive business. So taking the leap was the first thing, acknowledging the risk. And then it's about commitment. And as I often say to people, the lesson that I learnt was to put my heart and soul and everything into it, but also to draw a line in the sand. It's impractical for someone to go without income, sleeping on friends' couches, and generally becoming an obsessive person about an idea which you talk to all your friends about and bore them silly, and it's just really unpleasant for everyone around you, because you think this is the greatest thing, and it's a sliced bread, and actually it's just another idea. So you draw a line in the sand, and I was getting dangerously close to my line in the sand, which was 6 months after graduation, and not having funding, which was really scary. But getting started is all about commitment, defining your risk, and then understanding your parameters. Yeah.
I love the way you describe risk, because it's really something which many people are thinking about, and they keep postponing. You went to Stanford to study. How else did you get changed apart from perception of risk?
Well, just picking up on your point there about postponing risk, I think sometimes the best advice for prospective entrepreneurs is not to quit your job, right? Is not to throw it all in and decide to have a startup. The reality is that there are lots of people out there in really good, well-paid jobs, who have fun in their teams, and and what they're doing now. But they have a burning desire to build an idea, and I'd say 80% of those people don't have the skills to actually do the building themselves. And one thing about being an entrepreneur that I've learned is that everybody is needed all the time to be firing at 100%. And I think a lot of people, could do a lot worse than stay in their jobs, earn the money, and finance someone else to build the product for them. You don't have to give away equity if you hire a studio. But the reality is, if you're a banker, then you're not going to necessarily have the technical skills to code an app, right? It doesn't mean you should quit and hire a CTO and blah, 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 and blah. It just is completely and totally inefficient. So I would say that, we can't get carried away by the fact that, we've all got to begin this life of becoming an entrepreneur. Actually, what we've got to do is work where we're most useful. And sometimes at the start of the journey, the most useful thing you can be doing is earning cash to pay other people to do your work for you.
And how did you do it in your journey at the beginning?
Well, I messed everything up, really, because I didn't understand that. And I was very single-minded, and I guess I just made a lot of mistakes. It took me 48 pitches to get my first VC to say yes.
48?
Yeah, it was massively distressing. I'm an optimist by heart, but it's really tough. You're just getting rejected.
But you were the master of pitching towards the end, right?
No, I was complete. There's one lesson that you need to learn with pitching, and that I discovered towards the end, which helped me get the investment, and the poor chap who eventually invested was left having to because of this. And the one thing you need to know about pitching is never answer the same question twice. You have to, if someone gives you feedback, and you should always ask for feedback, if someone gives you feedback and says, I don't like it because of X, or I don't believe in this metric, or I don't think you have the talents to do this, then next time you pitch to someone, you cover that point off. You cover that point somewhere during your presentation. Because what happens is, eventually, someone, somewhere, is going to run out of questions to ask, and they're going to have to write you a check. Because there's no reason not to. And I guess I learned that on about pitch 25. That. Yeah.
So then you had 48 pitches to get to the first funding. Did you have to go to get outside funding, or could you bootstrap at the beginning?
Yeah, there was no way of really. I mean, obviously school is quite expensive, so I spent savings on that. Look. So we graduated in June, end of June, and I said if I don't manage to do this by December, then I'm going to get a job. And I think the first investment was sort of 10th of December, so it was cutting it very fine.
Very close, yeah.
Very close, but I couldn't have bootstrapped it. The thing is, again, another difference when you're planning your businesses, or as many of you are involved in your businesses now. Thinking about the infrastructure required. For your business, like what we do at Nutmeg, managing people's money, is an incredibly infrastructure-heavy business. So there's an awful lot of technology that needs to be built before we can go live, and we couldn't really beta test it. I mean, it's not like you can go to someone and say, "Hey, deposit 100 grand," and then the next day the screen shows zero value, and you're like, "Oh, sorry, it's just a beta test." They don't really appreciate that. So for us, it was going to cost at least a couple of million to build the infrastructure.
And you were working on it for 1 year before you launched, right?
Beg pardon?
You were working on the product for 1 year before you launched.
Yeah, so we did about 6 months of user testing and that ethnographic research to get some of the front end sorted out, and at the same time applying for our regulatory permissions, and at the same time building the piping underneath. So it was just over a year actually before we launched. And it's funny because when you launch, as many of you will know, you have what's commonly known as the TechCrunch spike, where TechCrunch features you as like, this product's launched, and suddenly your Google metrics go crazy because 3,000 people look at your website, and you're like, oh my God, and you remodel all your financial forecasts for 3,000 people to be looking at you every day. And the next day it's like back to 30. And you're like, okay.
Did this happen to you?
Yeah, totally. We launched on a Sunday in the Sunday papers, and we lined up an exclusive with a big paper.
Very cool.
And they put this out, and they said, "Yeah, a new type of investing service is coming." And I remember the whole team was in, waiting for this flood of phone calls and everything. And I think, like throughout the day, 300 people hit the website, and we signed up like 4 clients.
Oh wow.
It was no money. I mean, it's absolutely no money, and you just have to accept, that you go through these bumps in the road, and as long as everyone can laugh about it, it's okay.
So you launch, and then it goes up, and it goes down, and what do you do then? How do you get new customers on board? Was the strategy with PR, or you wanted to get people you know first?
Oh, look, I'm not going to be the expert in the room about talking about customer acquisition, because everyone, does this differently. But I think there is a truism, which is that often the most effective solutions surprise you.
Yes,
and,
that's true.
And therefore, the advice that I would give is to try as many different things as you can, as efficiently as possible. Mm-hmm. And we have tools now that help measure marketing and sales far more effectively than we've done ever before. So if you can do a bit of, radio advertising or advertising on the tube, or, that's fantastic. Test how it works. Nothing in the world is a better marketing tool than a great product. It just trumps everything else you've got. Because if you build a great product, people will share it with other people, and it'll be around the dinner party. Oh, aren't you using this, or aren't you using that, or, and people, that's the most infectious thing, right? And, for us at Nutmeg, it's all about building those little moments of happiness, right? When someone reaches the goal for their house deposit, so they've got enough money to buy a house, or after the referendum when they log in and see that their portfolio is up, not down. Those things mean so much to people that then they tell their friends, and it builds. We can't recreate that, even if we had the fanciest YouTube. One example, I would say, amazing result today, and congrats to the guys at Dollar Shave Club. They made, 3 YouTube clips 4 years ago,
viral.
And it's $1 billion exit today. So that's pretty fantastic.
Yes, big news. Talking about the product, how much time did it take you till you felt you have a great product already?
I don't think I'll ever feel the product is ready. I don't think I'll ever think that we are doing all that we can to build an amazing user experience. I saw a question just before we came on, which is, how does the vision of Nutmeg 5 years ago, compare to where we are now? Uh-huh. And I'd say that it's pretty cool, and it's pretty aligned to where I thought we'd be. We've built what I imagined 5 years ago. However, we're nowhere close to what I imagined 2 years ago, or even 1 year ago, or where I want to be in 5 years' time. Because all this stuff now, all this new stuff, and it just can improve and improve and improve.
Yeah, well, they say if you knew what you know now, you wouldn't start probably. It's a big journey, it's about a journey. What is your, in terms of product, I know that you have a nice mixture of people like to be in control, however they don't like responsibility when it comes to investing. And you managed to find a balance where they decide on the overall goals, but you let them, you help them manage on the day-to-day basis, or how does it work? Yeah,
that's pretty much exactly it. But I would reframe your phrase about people like to be in control. People like to blame other people, for everything, especially in this country. And the reality is that we get blamed when things go down, and people take the credit when things go up. And I'm cool with that. I'm cool with that because I understand I do it myself. And I have access to our investment team, and when they're doing fine, I think, it's because of the risk setting that I chose, and aren't I smart? And when they're doing rubbish, I'm like, why have you allocated 7% of my portfolio to Japanese equities? Anyone could have seen the yen was going to weaken. And they're just looking at me like, but that's what humans are, right? Yeah. And so we're in a world where whatever product you build, you won't hear about customers when it's going well. They will tell their friends, and you'll get virality and all the rest of it. But you will hear about it when it goes badly. And we have to accept that and just take it on the chin And isn't it a wonderful problem to have that people are using your product and helping you become a success?
Yes, let's take one step back and talk about the acquisition for a little bit more, because you said you have to test and see what works, what doesn't. Which ways of getting customers you thought would be working well and didn't?
Well, in our industry, which is looking after people's money, most companies, and the difference between us and everyone else obviously is that you can only use them if you have £500,000, and we allow people to invest from £1,000, and that's why they're face-to-face only, and we're online as well as all the rest of the channels. But most companies advertise in glossy magazines, newspapers. They're targeting people on that kind of high brand emotive. It's usually a picture of like a grandfather with a grandson walking on the beach with the sun going down, being like, don't let the twilight set on your portfolio or something like that. I mean, it's just terrible. If this wasn't being live streamed, my language
sounds
would
like
be
a cool
worse.
movie.
But I mean, if so we started advertising, in the paper and banner adverts online, and that just doesn't work at all for us. People look at it and go, let me see what's happening on Facebook.
You had a campaign on the Tube as well, right?
Yeah, the Tube is really successful for us.
Okay.
Which is interesting. So Tube's definitely one of our better, methods of advertising. And I think it's partly because the audience we target is quite urban and digitally savvy. It's also, I think, the reflection time people have. If you're going to work, you're thinking, do I want to be in this job for the rest of my life, or is it time I started saving so I could fund my own startup?
Yeah.
And when you're going home, you're thinking, do I really want to live in Zone 6 because London house prices are so crappy? So, should I save for a deposit on a house? So I think it's a good way to capture people as they're thinking about that kind of thing.
Yes. Now you build the product, you raise funding, you're kind of good there. When you started hiring people, can you share with us your insights from having hired a bunch of people? How big is the company now?
Too big?
Too big.
No, I didn't say that.
Not it.
It's about 80 people.
80 people. So when you hire people, are there things you're looking out for in terms of culture fit and expertise?
Yeah, sure. So I think I was thinking about this today with someone actually. I think the first 20 people who we hired all took between a 30 and a 60% pay cut if they came out of jobs, which was quite interesting. And for me, the secret to hiring is pretty simple. The people you hire have to be 100% passionate about the purpose of your company. And I don't want them to recite why it's a hot market opportunity. I don't want them to recite, that they're fantastic and could move my product into, a new country or this acquisition channel or whatever. I mean, that comes later. All I care about in the early stage is the fact that they understand that we are doing something that means so much to people, and what we are doing is giving people access to a great saving investment product, and that they want to do it, and they've proven through their career that is genuinely something they want to do. And if they share that passion, then I know they're going to be a great fit, and I know they'll never stop working hard to achieve what we want to achieve.
When you hire, do you offer the first employees some stock options, or it's just salary?
No. So pretty much everyone at the company has stock, and I think that's really important. One of the failings that I've had as a leader is to adequately explain the value of that stock to people. I think we should do much more about educating people why it's important to have stock options and what it means for them. As the company grows, there is still an underappreciation of how valuable that stock is.
True.
And I'm not sure if that's a cultural thing or a country thing or whatever. But I have not done enough lunch and learns or one-on-one sessions to explain to people that actually they need to focus much more on that kind of comp, and I would definitely recommend anyone to do that. But I wouldn't want people who weren't hungry for stock, because it's a signal.
Interesting. Let's ask the audience, guys, how many of you are either founders or early employees in a starting up company? Raise your hand. There's a bunch of you. How many of you have stock options in a company? Put your hands up. Maybe a half? It seems pretty healthy.
Not enough. How many people are in jobs who are thinking about starting a company?
Maybe a
excellent
fifth.
Okay, I'm appreciative of that particular section all sitting at the front. It's good.
It's a good lesson for next time. Now, talking about the culture, what is the culture of Nutmeg?
Quite cerebral, quite intellectual, quite thoughtful, probably a bit too discursive. We like to chat around ideas because of our product-focused approach and the research style we have. We like to really make sure we're under the skin of things.
Yeah.
So again, another failing of mine, which the team helped me out on, is we have a very clear vision, very clear purpose, but sometimes we need to prioritize better. So I've been guilty in the past of dragging too much through the product development pipeline. So I'd say it's quite a inclusive culture.
Yes. Now the company is quite healthy. They say it's a unicorn. Does it mean anything to you, or you don't focus on it at all, on the valuation of the company?
No, I've once or twice done the calculations of paper money, but I have plenty of practical experience of people who, friends and family members and clients and all the rest of it, are people who are very wealthy on paper and then have absolutely nothing to show for it. And the most recent example of that would be anyone who works in a bank. They've got stock options at X and the share price is kind of like this. Unfortunately, that's a sad reality. Mm-hmm. So as far as I'm concerned, there's no meaning to any valuation until that money is liquid, and even then, there's when you think about wonderful companies that have started as ideas in the last 10, 20 years, they haven't liquidated quickly. Facebook was 10 years. Google was I think 12 years to IPO. This isn't something where you go from zero to hero in 3-4 years. And so I don't think it matters where you are on that journey. What matters is that you're going to get to the end of the journey and you're going to build a big company. I agree. Maybe there's never coming the end of the journey. But from your founder's perspective, what are some key KPIs you really pay attention to? I think every business is different, so the KPIs will be different for everyone involved. I would say the worst KPI I've ever heard of is people measuring the success of their business by how many employees they have. I mean, that one I just think is absurd, because frankly, the more employees you have, the more cost you have, and the more requirement you have to scale and build efficient operational platforms. So I'd say that's an anti-KPI. I suppose the ultimate KPI which covers most businesses is the payback period. How long does it take you? When relative to the customer acquisition cost and the annual cost of managing that client, how long does it take the client to pay you back? In software, you're aiming for under 6 months, pretty much, as a rule. In our business, it's anywhere up to 5 years. In some longer sales processes, it can be even longer. But that probably encompasses most of the businesses that people here would be founding. Okay. One of the things which many, not only founders and CEOs, but also investors pay attention to a lot is the product market fit. And we have a question on Slido here. What's the product market fit for you, and when have you found it at Nutmeg? Yeah, so I did a, sorry if you're watching, Professor, I did an entire course on this at Stanford.
Oh, you did?
And it's a bit like blockchain. I still don't really know what it is.
But you know when it comes, right?
Yeah, I'll know when it comes. So I think product market fit is about when do you know that you've reached a tipping point between you know, there being enough acceptance of your product to mean that it really is a good idea and that it's viable and it's going to succeed and your company will likely, unless you mess it up terribly, not go into liquidation. And I guess for us, you know, that probably happened when we hit the top 20 lists for
top 20
of wealth managers in the UK.
Okay.
So these companies have been around for 100, 200, 300 years in some cases. And when we got into the lists of being one of the biggest top 20 wealth managers in the UK, I began to think, you know, okay, there is true adoption of this. Mm-hmm. You know, the population is really big. It's 60 million people who could use a Nutmeg.
Yeah.
So, you know, if you've got 300, I don't think you can really claim product market fit. But when, you know, so sorry whoever asked the question. Please come and tell me afterwards what you meant.
Do you see any mistakes people do when they try to fit the market with the product, or vice versa? Scaling too fast?
It's hard to think that scaling too fast is wrong unless you're doing it with no cost control. But I would say there are many times when I've seen people put square pegs into round holes. So, for example, you know, I get a lot of people coming from very important companies in financial services and consulting and the rest of it, saying to me that they want to work in strategy in a startup. Now, I don't know what that means. Like, as far as I'm concerned, there is no such thing as strategy. You know, it's like get shit done.
Exactly.
Right? You know, that's what you need to do.
It's a simple strategy.
So you know, it's very attractive to hire, you know, smart people to work on strategy, but I genuinely, you know, and I've seen it happen, and I think it just creates unhappiness for, you know, for the leaders and the founders and then the people who have been hired. And I'd say when you scale, the temptation is to think that you can fit, whether it's people, you know, who you don't need, or marketing channels who you don't need, or you know, just stuff you don't need, stuff you would never really hand on heart tell your backers that was the most important thing in your company, into your company. And I'd say always watch that. You know, always watch it.
Yes. When you were starting and got some funding and you started to grow, did you have any disagreements with your investors about how to grow and what priorities to choose, or you were on the same page?
There's always disagreements. The key for me has been being humble enough to know that I'm being very well managed by my investors.
Yeah.
They are never, you know, Nick, you're an idiot, you're doing the wrong thing. They are always, have you considered this and have you considered that? And they've been exemplary investors, you know, all the way through, and I couldn't have asked for more from them. But there have absolutely been times when you look around the room and you can see that they think you're bonkers.
Yes, we have to say that you know, Nick was fortunate by having investors like Tim Draper from DOJ, invested in Tesla and SpaceX. How did you get to these kind of investors to convince them to come on board with Nutmeg?
So Tim was an introduction through a classmate, but you know, I think the best way you can attract investors, if you're struggling to get hold of people, is obviously to meet them face to face, and an introduction is the second best way you can do it, and a personal introduction to an investor is 10 times better than anything else you could do yourself.
True.
But if you're struggling to reach investors, and particularly the investors who you want to meet, which I'll come back to in a second, but then I think reverting to the old-fashioned way is the best. Like, there is nothing that makes me happier than reading a letter that's been written, rather than just an email. You know, I always pass the CVs on to our HR department from people who have written a nice letter, explained why they want to work at Nutmeg, what their purpose in life is, you know, and enclosed some details about themselves. If it's a cold, you know, email, it's just not going to get any attention. And I think the same with investors. You know, the pitches that I see now, I really appreciate it when someone thinks, why have I chosen Nick? You know, why do I think Nick would be a good investor? Mm-hmm. And to that point, you know, when you go pitch for money, just learning on, you know, from what my experience was, and if it's your first round and your seed round and you're doing friends and family and angels, I would really encourage you to make a list of 40 angels, and then from that list, put the 10 angels that you really want to have subject matter expertise at the bottom of the list, and the 10 angels who have got money but nothing to do with your product at the top, and then work from top to bottom and practice your pitch. And don't go and see those angels that would really add value to your business until you've seen 30 people who have money but no real value. Because you're just not going to be proficient enough to show them why you want them until you've spoken to a lot of people and done a lot of practice.
That's very good advice, but how do you reach them? You're looking for introductions, or you reaching out via LinkedIn or cold email?
So LinkedIn is really good for angels.
Yes.
So there's a lot of angel investors in LinkedIn. Uh-huh. But again, the ones you really want, you know, you need to explore over the 3 months that you're practicing on the other 30. Yeah. Personal connections and going to meet them at places, you know, like this, and also writing to them. You know, persistence does pay off.
Okay. We have another question on this note. How did you get 48 pitches with VCs and angels, probably, right?
Yeah, it's horrible. As is what I'm telling you, it's just, obviously I was living in Silicon Valley, so let's be frank, there are more VCs. But I mean, it wasn't just VCs, it was angels as well. And it's just, you know, it's just heartbreaking. I remember there was one VC towards the end, October time, who I'd been trying to get an appointment with for ages and stalked him at conferences and, you know, tried to get introductions and blah, blah, blah. And he was, you know, a fintech VC. And I had such high hopes going in there, and I worked to refine my presentation from the pitch I'd done a couple of days before for him. And I worked until about 3 in the morning. I can still remember where I was, and I was doing this pitch, presentation, preparation, and it got to him in the morning, it was 10 a.m. or something, and it was a hot day, and, you know, I was hot, and then he was 5 minutes late, and it was rushed, and I bought a PC laptop, and the pitch room only had an Apple connector, and then they got a PC connector, and then the pitch didn't work, and I just remember getting to the end and praying. He would say, "Oh, this is the best idea since." And he said, "Nick, look, I know you've been trying to get hold of me for a long time, so I'm going to give you some honest feedback. Because I've seen high school students do better pitches than that."
Oh, wow.
And it was so disastrous, you know, for me. But what I realized was that actually, you know, this is not an easy game. Right? This is really not an easy game. And if you want to play, and it's not just about the sacrifices you make to income and the hours that you make. It's about the perseverance. And, you know, my favorite quote in the world is Teddy Roosevelt, you know, which is, you know, credit does not belong to those who sit on the sidelines, those who, you know, laugh at the people who are making the attempts, you know, or those who get, you know, dust kicked in their face, right? The credit goes to the person in the ring, you know, who's getting dirty, who's failing, who's trying again. I'm paraphrasing because I've forgotten the quote.
Yeah.
You know, and that's how I feel. It's, you know, if you want to be one of those people, then know you're doing it, and you're being a massive achiever, but it's bloody hard.
It is, and you're raising a good point, and the point is, when should you stop? What is a sign that your idea just isn't the right idea? How many investor pitches do you need to have to find it out?
I think it's time. I don't think it's about the number of pitches. for me, this is my personal opinion, I think it's about time, because time dictates that when you run out of money, time dictates when you become a selfish person to your friends and family.
Yeah.
Time dictates when you might have a visa that expires or whatever else. So whenever you decide to start a business, my personal view would be to say, if you haven't raised X or got X number of customers by this date, then I'm going to stop.
What kept you going? Did you get good feedback from your peers and investors were not too optimistic, or how did you kept going for so long?
No, I don't want to make it sound like I was, particularly, I was getting beaten up by investors, but it was also
48 pitches is a lot. It's a big number.
Yeah, but at the same time, I was becoming more passionate about the product, right? And I was becoming more optimistic about the opportunity, and I could start seeing that this was actually going to happen, and I could start understanding the trends. And the other thing that was very fortunate for me, which I obviously had absolutely nothing to do with, just for the record, was the global financial crisis, because that had changed, public opinion of financial institutions tremendously. And coming out of that, we saw a huge uplift in people's willingness to accept new things from the finance industry.
We've seen a bunch of companies like this, like Eventbrite, which thrived in the crisis because people were leaving jobs and they wanted to set up their own events and make some money doing that. So you're also lucky to do that. Let's talk a bit about geography. So you studied in Stanford. The idea was born in Stanford. You started to do it there, but now you're here in London. You didn't want to stay in Silicon Valley to build a company there?
Well, I mean, okay, the idea was conceived there, but it was definitely born here. There was the financial regulator in the UK is so far ahead of anyone else in the world. Mm-hmm. It would have been very hard for me to do what we do in the US.
That's interesting.
In my personal opinion, raising capital here is easier than raising capital in the US. And the reason I say that is because whilst there might be 10 times the capital, there's probably only 5 times the ideas. Here in the UK, you're only competing with 2 times the number of people who want to start businesses. And if you have a good business idea, you get backed very easily, because there are people with cash willing to give it to you.
Yeah.
I think that the UK provides a superior, certainly in financial technology, a superior testing bed and building bed for young companies.
It's interesting, we had the founder and the CEO of Metro Bank on our stage before, and they were raising over $1 billion, and they just couldn't convince the UK investors, so they raised over 95% from the US, for example.
This is Vernon.
Yeah.
I've just been with him before coming here. And he said that to me as well. Just go raise money in the US.
So you have the opposite experience.
He's American, and maybe that plays into a part of it. I must say,
sure, but his company was starting here.
Sure, look, there is a bias. Okay, I was fed up of hearing my classmates say that once your company gets big enough, some American company will buy it. I know that's a joke, but it does kind of, And look, I don't know. I think that. A lot of raising money comes down to empathy. Can people, which is why I talk about these angels being the last ones you should see, right? Because if you're building a, ed tech business, you need to go see the angels and the investors that are experts at ed tech, because they're going to understand it. But don't go see them first. Go see them last when you've tested on people who don't understand. Because so much about fundraising is empathy. If the person likes you, that's all they've got to go on, right? Yeah. When you start your business, it's a PowerPoint. It's not a business. Get over it, right? It's not like you've got, Dr. Evil's tower to sit in and, twizzle on your chair. Like, there is no one. There is nothing. It's just you and some deck.
Uh-huh.
And so, if you can find people who empathize with you, and perhaps that's a bit about the culture side of it as well, then maybe that helps.
Okay. When it comes to Nutmeg, what were the biggest challenges apart from funding you went through?
So at the founding.
Apart from funding, what other big challenges did you have as a founder of Nutmeg?
Well, I think one of the challenges that I had as a leader of a business was understanding how and how much transparency to give to employees. So when I started, I very much had the view naively that my job was to be some sort of shield between the employees and any bad news, right? And particularly this came around fundraising. So when we were really struggling, to fundraise, and it's not just in the first time, but when we had 20 people and you're going through the next raise and you haven't reached your proof points and haven't got to product market fit and all those kind of issues, it was tough. And I was taking it all upon myself and making sure that the other guys had cover so that they could continue the work they were doing. And what I learned, and if you want a far better description of this than me, then read Ben Horowitz's book, Hard Thing About Hard Things. But what I learned was that, actually the best way that you can encourage and motivate your team is to give them as much information as possible. Because these are not people who are normal people, right? They're slightly crazy like you. They've given up incredible jobs to come and work for you and your vision, right? They want to be part of it. They want to understand the pain as well as the pleasure. And I think we have a lot of, I guess as human beings, we feel a lot of responsibility to our customers, responsibility to our investors, and responsibility to our staff. And I wish I'd shared a bit more of that. It would have made me feel better, and would have certainly made the team feel better.
So now you're much more open with the team?
Yeah, and it's funny, because they don't get scared. It used to be they would get scared, and I shouldn't have told you that. But it's not anymore. There are people, obviously, in the team who now it's big enough, they aren't necessarily joining for the same reasons that the people at the beginning joined, and therefore it's not appropriate to say to them, oh, by the way, if we don't raise money, then everyone's out of a job in 3 months.
Yeah.
But for most people who have joined the team, that's an absolutely appropriate thing to say. It's not true, but in our case, but I mean, it certainly has been true.
How does your competition influence what you do and how you do
it? So we don't really have that much competition here. There's a couple of little nutmegs that have started up over the last year or so, but we pretty much have to try and frame the market, which is a really expensive thing to do in our industry, because
it is, yeah.
Not only are we saying, well, we'll help manage your money, we're persuading people that they're wealthy enough to have their money managed. I mean, the amount of phone calls we get from people saying, so I've got £50,000 and I know that's not enough for a company like you, but I was just wondering if you'd give me some help. People just do not understand that a service this premier is available to everybody. So the dual challenge of opening the market and then converting the customer. The other competition we have is, of course, leaving money in a bank account or buying some shares yourself. I think buying some shares yourself for a first-time investor is pretty scary, and that doesn't happen very often. And leaving money in a bank account is pretty terrible at the moment. If anyone can get over 1% of interest, they're doing well. And the other thing which is noticeable in that is we actively hire people who don't have a financial services background, except in our investment team and operations teams, because we don't want anyone to think like an existing financial services company. That would be a complete disaster for us.
Yeah.
If someone came in and said, oh, let's build this in the way that we did it here, I mean, that would be totally the wrong way around.
It holds you back mentally. When it comes to customer segments, as the company grows, are you still after the same segments because the market is big, or you keep growing into new segments?
So, our core target market is people between the ages of 27-ish and 55-ish who live in urban areas in Britain, who are digitally savvy. They don't have to be experts, but they probably have a smartphone.
Yeah.
And the research that we've done shows us that they fly British Airways or Virgin. You know, they have at least one pair of Levi's. They shop at John Lewis and have Dyson products. They spend far too much money if they're boys in bars, far too much money if they're girls on clothes. They use products like Amazon and Uber, have take-home shopping for their groceries, etc., etc., etc. It's, you know, is pretty confined to a set of people who work in professional services. So that's lawyers, accountants, bankers, corporate finance, media, marketing, technology. You know, those are our core customers.
Yeah.
It's a massive group. It's a very wealthy group. We don't necessarily need to expand it too much. What happens by coincidence, and this is the lovely thing about Nutmeg, is that you know, if you're 40 and you're using Nutmeg and you're seeing great investment results come in and not much fees, and your parents have an account somewhere else, then you know you're looking at that account your parents have, and just as a comparison, you know, some of our top competitors, if you had £500,000 with them and £500,000 with Nutmeg, over 30 years, the difference in fees, you know, go to the website for the stats and the data.
Yeah.
But over 30 years, difference in fees can be upwards of £300,000. So what we see is people who are 40 telling their parents, move my bloody inheritance to Nutmeg now, because you are costing me, you know, X hundred thousands of pounds. And so I think the segments that we start to appeal to tend to be wealthier, and that's how we've done it. Not wealthier in terms of intellect or knowledge or you know, or worldly wise. Just more wealthy in the fact that they've got assets and they're not spending as much.
You have this saying in your industry, where are the customers' yachts? Do you want to tell us why you have that in the industry?
What's that?
Where are the customers' yachts?
Sorry, I don't know.
Where are the customers' yachts?
Oh, where are the customers' yachts?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I always struggle with the fact that if you're a private banker and you drive a Porsche and you live in a massive house, then you know, obviously you're doing something right in terms of the fees you're charging your customers. But I'm not so sure that the customers are getting the service that they thought they were getting for the price they thought they were paying.
Exactly.
And so our little mantra there of where the customers' yachts are, it's okay for us to have yachts and toys and all the rest of it, but let's make sure all our customers have those first. Because if they get rich, we get rich. But let's not get rich without them getting rich.
Yeah, I like it. It's very fair. When it comes to Nutmeg, what is your biggest next milestone which you see for the company coming up? What's your next big milestone?
So we're you know, at the moment we manage people's money, but we don't give specific financial advice. We've now obtained our regulatory permissions to do that, and very soon we'll be launching the first sort of online automated financial advice product in the UK, which will help people sort of understand, is this the right time to invest? You know, should I be doing something else with my money? You know, am I crazy to, you know, be paying off this debt instead of this debt, that kind of stuff. And that's going to be, I think, very transformational for, you know, for a lot of people who have struggled to get the help they need for financial situations.
Mm-hmm. When it comes to scaling to other markets, how hard is it for you concerning the fact that regulation is a big part?
Well, the trouble with scaling to other markets is that you naturally are losing focus on what you're doing here, and we have this constantly, you know, push on us. Can we white label you in Norway, or can we, you know, use the Nutmeg technology in Brazil? And I kind of understand that, and it's very attractive from the outside. And you know, if you did hire someone from a bank to do, you know, strategy for you, they'd probably tell you it's the right thing to do. But I really struggle to see why we would do that, when if we just had 1% of the investment assets in this country, we'd be at the top 20 biggest companies in the FTSE. You know, if we had 3% of the assets, we'd probably be the biggest company in the UK. We're going after a market which is half the size of the US market here.
Oh, wow.
Multi-trillions of pounds under management. even if all of you invested, 250k today with us, we'd still have 0.00000 of the assets we could go after. So for us, it's just a question of size. We don't need it.
Yes. Talking about the future of Nutmeg, where do you see that? What's left to do for the company? Is it geography? You want to expand to other markets? You want to conquer new markets here, or convince more people to join you as a customer?
We have hardly scratched the surface of what's possible. We help so few people with their finances that it upsets me every day. We are nowhere near to securing policy which actually provides people with transparency over how much they pay.
Yeah.
Nutmeg is the only company in our industry to show our investment performance on our website. Like, there is so much to be done in this industry to put things right. You asked me a question about politics at the very beginning, and if the referendum and all that's happening in the world now isn't a wake-up call for politicians, then I think we might as well just sack a lot of them and create a new political movement. But it shouldn't just be a wake-up call for politics. Every industry needs to look at their customers and understand what they need. And in finance, it's no different at all. Like, we have been repackaging the same products for years and years and years, and making them a bit more sparkly and a bit more expensive, or charging in a different way that confuses someone, because they're not thinking about this, they're thinking about that. We haven't actually done much new, right? And we will, we had a warning in the financial crisis that people were going to, start really loathing financial institutions. We will get a bigger shock. We will have people moving with their feet if we do not heed these warnings. And I think that we have a lot of responsibility to do as entrepreneurs, all of us, to create products which people actually want and need, and solve problems rather than just redesigning the same thing.
Yeah. Talking about creating products, do you see yourself as a serial entrepreneur, or you just want to take Nutmeg to the sky?
So I think that's an impossible question to answer, but what I do think is a possible, is a plausible personality sort of answer is if you are someone who struggles to work in hierarchies, right? If you are someone who, even though you work in a political environment, you don't know how to do politics, right? Not that you're not very good at it, you just don't know how to do it. If you enjoy starting companies and in a strange way relish the challenge that brings, if you are someone who is never happy with, their physical health or mental health or, all the rest of it, you are going to struggle to work in one place all of your career, and you're going to struggle to work in a big organization that is bound by its very nature to constrain you, right? And I think it's not about being an entrepreneur and starting lots of businesses. It's about knowing that you have a certain skill set, and that skill set needs to be applied across whatever you choose to do. And if it isn't a big company, I just pray that you have a boss and a team around you who understand that you're going to cause a lot of pain for other people by the things that you do, but it'll be worth it in the end. And if it is an entrepreneur, then you do it multiple times and enjoy the failures and embrace the success.
You as a successful entrepreneur in fintech, where do you see fintech in London compared to the world scene of fintech?
Well, I mean, I get asked that question quite a lot. I think at the moment, London is the premier place in the world for fintech, but it is definitely losing its lead. There are places around the world who are developing a regulatory system like ours. Australia and Singapore are, catching up very fast. There is undoubtedly more capital in the US going into fintech businesses. Financial institutions around Europe are investing heavily into fintech. If you look at someone like BBVA, the Spanish bank, they've shifted their entire model to be focused on technology.
Yeah.
So I would say that we're in a place at the moment where we have a slight amount of leadership, but if we don't do everything possible, I'm not involved in that too much, but if the UK does not do everything possible to maintain that leadership role, then they will very quickly lose it.
What's your favorite fintech product at the moment?
I'd have to say, because I've been in Italy for 3 weeks, it's probably Revolut.
Okay. Do you guys know Revolut?
Revolut.
It's basically transfer-wise on a card, right?
Yeah, I'll show you my card, but it's... Yeah, they're raising on Crowdcube.
They just raised
raising on Crowdcube, yeah. But it's an absolutely sensational product to, it's multi-currency debit card with no fees and an app where you can just convert money at the touch of a button. It's pretty cool actually.
It's a cool product. I like it. It's very nice. It's called Revolut.
Revolut.
Yeah, you can test it right now. There are some questions on Slido, and then we can go to Q&A. If you guys have any questions, please start thinking about them. We'll be asking them in a minute. One question on Slido is, as a Stanford MBA, do you think an MBA helps in pursuing an entrepreneurship dream?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, obviously you've got to find the right place. So you've got to find the school that has the right culture fit to you. But 100%. I wouldn't have been able to do it without the education and the camaraderie and the contacts and and just the feeling that risk is not doing it.
True. One more question from Slido. How can you compete with the big money managers who are buying or building robo-advisors?
Well, it's not how can we. I mean, we do. We're the biggest in the UK, so we don't face the same pricing pressure that there is in the US. Look, the reality is that if someone comes along and says, I'm going to invest 100 million in building the next Nutmeg, then we're going to face serious competition when they've built it.
Yeah.
Right? But that might take 5 years.
Sure.
So we're not seeing any of that yet. Mm-hmm. They face massive cannibalization issues. I mean, can you imagine going into a wealth management department of a bank and saying, we've just launched this product, it's superior to yours in every way and it's half the price? How do they feel about that?
Isn't TransferWise doing it though? TransferWise, are they doing that? They still connect with banks and they use them?
Yeah, so that question would be, should we white label or should we partner with banks and offer our product?
Okay.
The answer to that is we don't need to at the moment, but obviously open to it if it's a good deal.
Yeah, true. Before we go to the audience, one more question on your activities beyond Nutmeg. So you obviously don't just spend time with the company. You recently got married, you said. We were supposed to have this conversation here in April, but he was getting married, so we postponed to today. You stepped down as a CEO, you're still the founder of the company, you're still very close to the company, but you also teach, you give back to the community. Why do you do that?
Well, specifically on why I teach, I always wanted to be a teacher. That's what I thought I'd do all my life. I still want to be a teacher, when I grow up, and I just love that particular activity.
And you teach at Stanford, LBS?
No, I'm not sure. I think that's a bit of an exaggeration. I have taught, but it's definitely not a regular trip to California every couple of weeks to do a case study.
Okay.
But I love that part of being able to teach. I always say to people, particularly to people who are thinking about starting a business for the first time, and if anyone's spoken to me about this, I apologize for repeating again. Like I could not have started my business if I wasn't in really great health.
Yeah.
It just wouldn't have happened. It was too wearing on the body, not to do that. And obviously I've let it slip over 5 years, but when I started in 2010, it would be without doubt exercise every single day for 90 minutes. And that's because you need to be outside, you need to get fresh air, because all that the world is going to throw at you is just too much. Not to have that, for me, is, again, it's just personal, for me not to have the physical ability to keep concentrating, keep focusing, keep doing it. So, I would strongly suggest to people, if they're thinking about what to do with their time outside of outside of their work hours, if they're thinking about quitting.
It keeps you balanced as well. It's a very good point. Now, let's take some questions from the audience. Please, quick question, quick answer.
Hi, Nick. Thank you very much. Two quick questions. First one is, what are your sort of customer acquisition costs in fintech are notoriously high?
Okay, take it.
I just wondered if you need to share what they are for you. If not, what sort of graph you're seeing over time, up or down. And the second one, what are your assets under management?
So the assets is easy, so we don't talk about assets, and the reason for that is it's all user feedback. If you're with a traditional wealth management company and their minimum is 500 grand, you know that if you have 500 grand with them, they're going to pick up the phone to you last because you're the smallest customer. And we have a lot of people that transfer in from those traditional wealth managers, and they are not looking for that kind of service, right? They want to be on a par with everybody else, whether the Nutmeg customer's got 10 million with us or 10,000 with us. And so, we have a community that doesn't want us to talk about that. That may change, and if it does, then we'll talk about it. But no one is the small guy, right? No one is the small guy. Okay. Acquisition, short answers. Acquisition has trended down, but not as fast as we would like, obviously. And it basically trends down as you get more used to the tests that you do and doing campaigns together. So at the beginning, we did every individual marketing channel by itself. Now we are doing things in combination. So for example, we started TV advertising this year, and a combination of TV and paid search at the same time works really well for us, rather than doing things in isolation. So it's not just about brand awareness and becoming a bigger company. It's also about being able to test these things in, triplet next year, double this year, and finding all the secrets to that as possible. We are about, I'd say, about half of what our brokerage competitors in the UK are for cost of acquisition, I suspect, at the moment.
Okay, next question.
Hi, Nick. 48 pitches. Can you pinpoint what it was that made the investors, say yes? Was there sort of one point in the deck that made them decide to invest?
What, the person that gave me some money? Yeah. So it was. I don't know, maybe you smile more that day. Maybe maybe you're in a good mood or whatever. But I went into the meeting with Tim, and it was a half-hour meeting. He's a busy guy. He asks lots of questions. He never sticks to the deck. Jumps around. After 15 minutes, he said stop, and I was like, oh, crap. That's it. Another one bites the dust. And he said, Nick, I have no idea if you're a good entrepreneur. And I said, okay, this is fantastic feedback. And he goes, but this is a really good idea, and you're the first person to pitch it to me, so I'm going to give you some money.
Wow. And
that was it, right? And actually, maybe it was my attitude, as I say. Maybe it was something he saw in the deck. Maybe it was something he saw in me. I don't know, but I do know I worked bloody hard to make sure there weren't any questions he could ask.
Mm-hmm. Okay, next question.
Thanks very much. How important is the investment allocation algorithm to your business, and how do you keep it up to date without causing massive swings in your recommended portfolio allocations to your clients?
Very good question.
So as a client, I think it's very important, but it's not actually an algorithm. So we have an investment team in-house to manage all the money, and we slightly differ from some of our American counterparts in that That's actually something that one of the reasons we moved to the UK, because in America, if you have an investment team operating your portfolios, then generally you need to have a face-to-face relationship. Slightly distorted view of the law, but that's basically how it works. So if you have an algorithm that just rebalances, it's okay. We actually believe that people can add value to the investment process. Can make sensible decisions, albeit on an asset selection level. So the answer to your question is we have a team who manage all the portfolios.
Thank you so much for sharing this. The question, you touched on a point where the leader and the energy of the leader. Besides exercising, how do you keep yourself in that mood? Because whatever mood you are, turns out to all your team.
It's a good question. I apologise to everyone over here. The reason I haven't been looking over this way much is because I fear of blindness from that light. So there is only one way. Exercise is supplementary, right? Exercise is something you do, to help you out. There is only one way to ensure that you're going to get out of bed every day with passion for your idea, right? And that is for the idea to have a purpose, and for that purpose to be something that you believe in. There is no way, I think that's the signal that we should all go and get a coffee and a beer. But no, this is important. There is no way that you're going to build a company that requires a big infrastructure and lots of money to be raised, and is something that you give up your alternative life for if you do not have absolute passion in the purpose behind that company. And that is the only thing that keeps you energized and out of bed. And whenever I've had a bad moment in the last 5 years, I think about the fact that we are doing this not just to get mega rich ourselves, which of course is true, but because we are helping so many people meet objectives that otherwise, if it wasn't for Nutmeg, they wouldn't be able to meet. So I would tell every entrepreneur on the planet not to start a business they weren't passionate about. If you're able to tune that out and what you want to do is create a new set of emojis, that's fine. I'm just not going to be able to understand you.
Mm. I fully agree. Last question, quick answer, please.
When you first started out with the idea, did you research people who were passionate in the idea? For example, did you develop the idea to
yeah, two things happened. One, my co-founder William is. I just got really lucky. Okay, so William is my uncle. He also happens to be one of the greatest financial technologists the world has ever produced.
Interesting.
Like he was a scholar at Cambridge and then went straight into developing the technology behind stock exchanges. He played a massive part in building the Japanese Stock Exchange, the Chicago Mercantile Exchange. In the late 1990s, he developed lots of technology behind what are now derivatives trading systems, and invented lots of those. So what we had was a crazy idea. You know, the VCs used to say that I used to give a really good PowerPoint presentation for which William was asleep for most of it, and they would wake up and realize that he was going to be the one that did all the work. So I got incredibly lucky, and he was passionate about the idea. And you know, if you talk to him, he hates people getting ripped off by financial advisors, and hates the fact that the market charges you a premium to trade, and hates things like commission when you have FX, you know, abroad and stuff like that. It's just not technology, right? Technology solves those problems. But then the first two people who joined us were passionate about the idea, you know, and they were passionate about finding a solution to this problem and doing the research that we needed. And the four of us started, you know, and just really got down to it. So all three of them were passionate when I explained it to them. We're just lucky to have a few people with the right skill sets.
Yeah. On a final note, you understand the power of learning, and do you have any mentors, or did you have any mentors when you were starting?
Yeah, I'm not sure I ever had the formal conversation with them and said, you know, will you be my mentor? But
you just said you've met Vernon now before this meeting and stuff like that.
No, you know what? I think looking back, I've been incredibly selfish. Actually, you know, and incredibly lucky. Like the amount of people in my life who I've asked a question to, and they have said, "Yeah, sure, Nick, I'll help," or "Yeah, sure, I'll do this for you," is frankly, you know, unbelievable and way beyond anything I deserve. And it's hopefully how I conduct myself now with people who I've got to know, and you know, people who you know, I've established a relationship with. But there were so many people I went to who helped me solve problems that, that I'm very grateful for that. Now I have a bit more of a formalized structure with a few people, but again, it's nothing particularly, nothing particularly formal.
Yeah. Do you mentor other people?
I don't think anyone would say that I mentor them.
Okay.
Sometimes
you have conversations.
Provide harsh realities to a few people. Look, if you want to start a business and you've got a business plan and you go around and ask all your friends if they think it's a great business plan, they're all going to say yes, okay? Because people don't like offending each other. What you really need to do is go around to everybody and say, oh, my friend's got this business plan, they've asked me to help out, I think it's a bit rubbish, it goes something like this, what do you think? Right? And then you're going to get proper feedback.
Yes.
Okay, then you get the honest truth about whether your idea is any
Sounds
good or not.
very simple.
Okay? And you should always do that with every business and totally depersonalize it and whatever. Now I know that people don't do that because they're so excited to tell you about their idea that I've tuned myself out of giving personal sympathies and just let it rain on them. Because you know what? Like, I understand if someone's pitching me a business that I'm going to be the nicest person out there.
Yeah.
Rather compared with some VC or whatever who's going to tell them it's a great idea, then walk away going, that guy is a total twat, or that lady has no idea. And so I just would rather be honest.
Yeah. And on this note, please join me in thanking Nick Hungerford from Nutmeg. Before we finish and start having a drink and meeting other people, I just want to say a few words. I want to thank to WeWork for having us here on a monthly basis. Our next meeting is going to take place on the 24th of August. We'll have actually a summer party, so it will be a free event. Once a year we do this, so please join us. Feel free to book your tickets. It will be up tomorrow. I also want to thank DWF, which is a law firm which helps startups from our network. If you're in need of having any advice, legal advice, of starting a company, doing a time sheet, stuff like that, let us know. We'll connect you. We'll happy to connect you. They also provide free advice. I also want to say thanks to IE Business School, which, according to the FT, has the best online educational MBA program in Europe, which was helping us online with the live stream. We have people on Facebook, on YouTube watching us tonight. And now it's time to say hi to other people. If you see people with bracelets like this, like G over here, G is our startup brand director in Cape Town with his lovely wife, Louise. We also have Greg from Auckland, New Zealand, who came to join this event today. And we also have Jonathan, who discovered Startup Grind in Sydney, Australia. He was living in Japan and now he came back. He's from Scotland and he will also be around. If you need anything, please let us know, either the guys from the team or myself. Happy to connect you and help you with whatever issues you have and whoever you want to meet. So thanks for coming. See you next month and let's have some drinks and meet some people.